there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I wanted to crank out my alcohol inks. Now this is my entire collection that I have. So I have it in this little, I think it's the Tim Holtz container, and I have these three at the back which are the Mixatives. I have the gold, the silver and then the white mixative. I have some blending foams, I have the blending solution, and then I just have one dedicated mini ink blending tool, and then these 12 alcohol ink colors at the front. Then I have some Yupo paper, and this is my entire collection, so I don't have a whole lot, and using alcohol ink is not something that I do super often, but I do enjoy having it, and I do enjoy having the few that I do have. So I'm going to put them to use today, and I kind of got out these four colors. I wasn't exactly sure where I was going with this. I wanted it to be kind of yellowy, orangey, so I am starting off by putting some of the blending solution down, and this just helps all of the alcohol inks move around. So I just go back and put a little few drops here, there and everywhere. I want there to kind of be some clear definition between the colors. I don't want it all to kind of meld into one color, but I don't want the colors to be too out there as well. So I am moving it around and letting some drip off. There's plenty of liquid on there because I use the blending solution at the beginning. And I am just putting more drops of whatever I really feel like it. So if I think there's one color that's kind of disappearing, I add a little bit more of that one. Alcohol inks are very fun to play with, but I do find them a little bit sort of out of my control sometimes, and I guess that's why I don't really lean towards them as a general medium that I use, but I do enjoy it when I do get them out. Now I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. This is a 110 pound Nina Solar white card base, and I'm going to start by adding a bit of a background here. Now you could definitely use stencils or anything that you have in your stash, but this is a bit of a DIY background. So I'm just going to rip up some strips of copy paper. Then I'm using a little bit of removable adhesive on the back of them, and then I'm going to place them down in the same order that I ripped them, and I'm going to pop them down on my card, leaving some gaps in between, and this is where I will end up putting some of the color. Now I kind of match them up because I want them to kind of follow on from each other. I want it to be kind of obvious that they're following on from each other. But you certainly don't have to do that at all. You can just plop them down. And I am going to leave quite big gaps here, but in a second I decide that the gaps are actually too big because it ends up making only 3 little stripes on my card. So you can see here I actually go back and rip them in half and make them a little bit smaller, so doing exactly the same technique, just a little bit smaller, and so more gaps in between, and that will leave a little bit more color on my page in the end. So I'm just going to pop them on, remembering that they have the removable adhesive on the back so that they're going to stick really nicely when I blend over top. Now because this is a background piece, my blending doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to create a focal point on the front as well. But I'm going to use some of this mustard seed, which is just a yellow distress oxide ink, and a finger dauber. Now I really like that the finger dauber gives kind of a nice light result, and again it doesn't matter if it's a bit blotchy or anything. I kind of think that's the look of what I'm going for, so it looks pretty good to me. I add that little bit of yellow down the bottom, and then I'm going to take off all of these strips, and I really like how this background turned out, considering it was kind of just having a bit of a play and seeing how it looked. I do think, however, I need to add one little stripe up the top. I think that looks a little bit empty, so I'm just going to reuse one of those strips and add a tiny bit more yellow up the top there. So I did this background piece while I was waiting for my alcohol ink panel to dry. So once it is all dry, and you want it to be completely dry before you go ahead and stamp on it, I'm going to use this flower stamp set here, and you can see the ones on the right have a little bit more detail. So I'm going to use the flowers that don't have as much detail. I'm going to stamp them down using some Archival ink, and I'm just going to stamp plenty of them. And at this stage I really didn't know how many I needed of each one, so I kind of just do plenty. And I did think about doing like a green panel as well, where I could do some of the leaves, but for now I was really just focusing on using the flowers. I kind of wanted there to be a whole lot of flowers cascading down the card. So that's what I was going for when I was thinking of this. Now luckily with the coordinating dies of this set, there are 2 of each die. So there are 2 of the large ones, 2 of the mediums and 2 of the smalls, so it did make the die cutting process a little bit quicker. I did heat set them with the heat gun just quickly because obviously this is still Yupo paper, which is plastic, so you can't add too much heat, but a little bit is fine. And then I'm going to line up all of the dies and run them through my die cutting machine. And because I had 2 of each die, this process didn't take me too long at all. So I've got them all cut out and I chose some of them here that I thought I wanted to use on my card in particular. And this is one of those cards where I had a plan, I did what I was thinking, but it didn't look right and it didn't feel right once I had stamped it out. So I've left this part in, I didn't edit it out so that you guys could just see. I'm going to use this Kelly Creates stamp set here, along with the VersaFine Clear Summertime ink, which is just an orange ink. It's a pigment ink, and I'm going to use my Misty just because I was going to shift the stamp. So I stamp it in the orange a couple of times, and then I take my background panel and I'm going to shift it up and to the left just ever so slightly, maybe a millimeter each way. And then I'm going to stamp it out a second time in the Tulip Red, the same VersaFine Clear ink, and I kind of wanted it to have a shadow effect, but once I had stamped it out a couple of times, I really didn't like the look of it at all. So then to fix it, I thought I would go over the red in some VersaFine Onyx black ink, so it would create a black stamp with an orange shadow, and then I go over that, and I don't like that at all either. So to fix up this, I liked my background too much to kind of start again. So this time I'm just going to put the You're Awesome on an acrylic block and stamp it out in the same VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is just a really nice dark black pigment ink that gives a really clear, crisp image. And so once I stamp it down, I'm going to trim it down to 4 1/4 across, because at the moment my card base is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and you can see it's going to cover it up nicely. So I am going to pop around, and I have a little bit of spiced marmalade on my finger dauber here, just to kind of make it all kind of fit in a little bit better. Then I am using up some stuff in my stash at the moment because I've had time to kind of clean out and clear out, so don't ask me where or how I got this foam tape, but I am using it up because there's just a tiny little bit left on the roll. So I popped that up on some foam tape, and then I'm going to cut off the excess down the side. So I definitely like this a whole lot better already, and I feel like I have saved the card for the minute. Then, just to kind of bring in those orange colours a little bit more, I did decide that I wanted to get the spiced marmalade. This is the re-inker, but you could just as easy use your ink pad. Pop a little bit down on an acrylic block, and I'm going to use some of that to create some splatters. So I'm just covering up my sentiment because I don't want that to have the splatters on it. And in general, the larger the paintbrush you use, the larger the splatters that you'll get. So I wanted to use not one that wasn't too big at all. So I've got my splatters on, and again, lots of these are going to be covered up as well. So that's why I wasn't afraid to put plenty on. I have all of my flowers here ready to go, and what I'm going to do with some of them is pop them up on some foam squares. Others are going to be perfectly flat, so I'm going to have lots of different levels here. And to be honest, when I was trying to figure out where I wanted them to go and placement and things, sometimes it's better to just kind of put them all down and not overthink it because it is really easy to kind of get lost in the finer details and making sure things kind of look perfect. So I really just ended up plopping them down here and being okay about it, and I kind of liked how it looked. So I pretty much went with this. So I kind of placed them all down, and then I took a photo on my phone so that I could see the rough order of how it was. And then I wanted, as I said, some to be nice and flat, so I used just some liquid glue. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. And then because remember that sentiment strip is popped up, some of the flowers will have a foam dot and some liquid glue so that they are nice and even on the card. Then I do pop some up on top of the sentiment strip with foam. As I said, I just do a whole different range there and fill up that space pretty much from top to bottom. And I think the reason that I kind of got inspired to do a card like this today was that I often play with my alcohol inks and create these cool backgrounds, and then sometimes I just pop them in a pile and then pop them away again because I had fun creating them, but I wasn't creating them for a specific purpose. So it's good to refresh my memory and remember that I can stamp on all of those beautiful backgrounds that I have created and either fussy cut them out or die cut them out and add them onto my projects as is. So I hope that that is kind of a good reminder during this card making session. To finish off these flowers, I did add some dots in here with the white Nuvo drops. However, I did feel like they kind of mushed together a little bit more, and when I did that one big dot in the middle of the flowers, I really like how that looked and didn't look quite so messy. It looked a little cleaner to me, so I ended up going over those couple again. And I liked how the white in the middle of some of the flowers matched the sentiment strip. It kind of brought out that really nicely. And then I go over the rest with some yellow, which is similar to my background color. So that was my card for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching this one. Let me know the projects that you are doing with your alcohol inks and Yupo paper. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye.